Hello and welcome to Bloodhammer. I'm Dan.
And I'm Dean.
And this week we wanted to bring you a video kind of building on what we've done in our last video, talking about how to obviously get into Warhammer, mainly talking about weapon skills. Now, I don't know if that's the official name for them, but it's things like your lethal hits, heavy, devastating wounds, things that actually kind of affect the weapons and your shooting phase, and things that are going to make a big difference to your army depending on which units have them.
Yeah, just little modifiers across both range weaponry, melee weaponry, things that can affect the game, things that, as we know from GW Nuances, that might not actually be particularly clear, that we thought, well, might spend a minute or two just seeing if we can help you out on.
Absolutely.
So we're going to start off with what assault is and what heavy is. So some of the units you'll have in your army will have options such as that, assault, heavy, for example. So you can obviously, if you're using the app, click on the relevant tag on the data sheet and it will go into a bit more detail as to what that actually means. We thought we'd try and give you a bit of a visual example. So using my intercessors here, I'm going to very briefly show you what assault is. So the intercessors, their guns have the assault wording, which means you can carry out your standard move, so 6-inch move. I'm only going to move one just for the example of this video. You will then roll 1d6 for advance, which I've got a 1. We're going to do a bit more dramatic and say I actually rolled a 5 just for dramatic purposes, and move another 5 inches. Now, usually if you don't have assault, what that means is I've done the move, I can't shoot, and unless I pay a CP, I can't shoot really without a stratagem, and I also can't charge. What assault means is the whole squad has moved up, they can now open fire with no penalty whatsoever. So anything with assault will let you move, advance and shoot, and if you're lucky enough on your army stratagems, you can send a CP and still do a charge. What intercessors also have is heavy. So if I put him back with his squad, what that will mean is if you don't move at all, heavy is +1 to the hit. So if you are hitting on 3s, heavy will mean you're actually hitting on 2s. So you'll complete your shooting as usual. So bolt guns 24 inches, you'll go, everyone in the squad can reach. So they're going for the Hellblaster, up in the building. That's the whole squad, based off intercessors, 4 shots per person, up in, hitting on 2s instead of 3s.
So on top of heavy and assault, you'll sometimes see other key tag words underneath. Now, it's not on every weapon, and again, not all of these are going to be all jumbled together on the same weapons. It's rare that you do get that. But all of these are the ones where you've got to make a decision when it comes to it. Obviously with heavy and assault, you need to make that choice. Do you want to keep them standing still or do you want to charge them in? Same with rapid fire and blast. You need to think about it when you're choosing who to target. If you take the Lancer here, going into this 10-man squad of intercessors, now, 2 of the weapons on the Lancer do have, one has blast, one has rapid fire. The Iron Hail Heavy Stuber has rapid fire, and the Fragstorm Grenade Launcher has blast. So, if I was shooting into a 10-man squad, with blast, with blast, however many models are in a unit, for every 5 you get an additional dice. So if the Fragstorm Grenade Launcher is 4 attacks, there's a 10-man squad, I get 2 more dice. So it's a way of using some of your weapons to target the bigger groups. You know, especially when it comes to things like tanks, you've got like 3 versions of the frag grenades and different missiles and stuff, where it will give you different options. Do you want to do blast to take out more infantry? Do you want to do more damage but you only get 1 attack? And rapid fire is very similar. Rapid fire is, you know, the Iron Hail Heavy Stubers, I'm pretty sure, a 36-inch shoot. With rapid fire, if you're within half of that distance, you get X amount more dice. So if it's rapid fire 2 and you're within 18 inches, you get 2 more dice. So again, it's a bit of a strategy thing of choosing what to target. With blast as well, it goes off the starting amount of models. So it's not based off, you know, oh, well actually I killed 6 and now there's only 4 of them so I don't get blast. It's however many there were at the start of your shooting with that specific unit. So again, it's something to think about when you're choosing what units to shoot at.
So now we're going to start talking about flamer weapons, in particular for ignores cover, precision attacks, and also devastating wounds. So starting with ignores cover. So some of the units that you'll have on the tabletop will have flame weapons, predominantly things like your Sisters of Battle love their flame weapons, but also Space Marines and other races, of course. So using Bjorn the Fellhand as an example, under True Claw he has a heavy flamer. So how flamer weapons work are, he will carry out his attacks as per the strat, which is 1d6. Let's say I rolled a 4 for it. Wouldn't roll to hit, that will be covered under Torrent, which we'll be explaining shortly. You would obviously then roll to wounds. So I've had 4 attacks, we're going to pretend I've wounded Dan twice. Now, Space Marines, 3-up armor save as we know. Heavy Flamer on Bjorn is -1 AP. So usually you'd go -1 AP, he's in a building, which means he has cover, so Dan will stick to his 3-up armor save. What ignore cover means is Dan will not get that benefit for cover. So instead of his modifier for cover keeping him to a 3-up armor save, the flamer will bypass that cover and will mean Dan will have to make 2 4-up armor saves from the flame weapon. So anything that has that ignore cover ability counters the cover in a nutshell. So moving from there, we then have precision attacks. So what that means is, I know you can get them on ranged weapon, particularly things like the Eliminators on Space Marines, Death Marks and Necrons have it as well, multiple others that I can't think of off the top of my head at the moment, but predominantly melee weapons more than ranged weapons. The example I'm going to be using is Arjak Rock Fist with his Wolfguard Terminators, laying into Dan's Heavy Intercessors led by the Apothecary Biologist. So what a precision attack means is, you as the attacker get to determine who you're going to attack first. So usually, pretending Arjak isn't there, I get through, let's say 10 wounds on Dan. Dan fails 3 of them, and he has to take 3 models off. Dan can choose whoever he wants. What the precision attack means is, I can say to Dan, right, all of my attacks from Arjak are going to go into the Apothecary Biologist first, then distribute down into the squad. So Dan knows the first one to die, fingers crossed for me, not for Dan though, will be him. So if I kill him, then any leftover wounds bleed down into the squad instead of bleeding upwards the way it would usually work. Once he is dead, it's up to Dan who he takes off. Then you can only choose 1 model at a time. Obviously, you don't have to do characters. If you're against a unit and let's say there's a Power Fist in there, you determine that one. But if you have the precision keyword on your model and on that weapon, you need to declare it to your opponent just so they're aware. Otherwise, they are within their right to take away whoever they want off the board. Our final example is going to be devastating wounds. So my head takers, led by their Wolf Priest, have charged into Dan's beloved bikes. So head takers do have precision and devastating wounds, but we've already discussed the precision, so we're going to stick to devastating wounds. So what a devastating wound is, you carry out your attack process as usual. So roll to hit as normal, and then roll to wound. Devastating wounds are predominantly 6s. There are some modifiers that will allow you on a 5, but it is predominantly a 6. Roll your dice, and any 6s go straight through as a devastating wound, and there is no armor save that Dan can make on that. So my Wolfguard head takers have a -2 AP, so Dan would be 5-up armor save on any attack bar the devastating wounds. Units that have feel no pains, so as a Blood Angels player as well, Death Company for example, they can take their feel no pain against devastating. You can't against mortal wounds though. So without them, if I put through 3 6s, let's just say, that'll be 1.5 bikes if my memory serves correctly, that would just be dead with no armor save.
So building on what Dean said, a couple of the other bits you want to maybe have a look out for when you're looking at your army is things like hazardous. So my Hellblasters have hazardous. Essentially what it means is, with a lot of like plasma-based weapons, you can supercharge them, which if you imagine it's just building up a big ball of energy and then firing it off. Supercharging them does come with hazardous. So For hazardous, you roll a dice for every model that is going to be shooting the supercharge or that has the hazardous tag when you're using that version of the weapon. And if you roll a 1, they die. If you do anything other than a 1, they live. So if we did an example of 5, and I'll roll these, so they're all safe. But if I got a 1, bang, one of my guys is dead. It's quite high risk, high reward. It does give you, usually I think with the Hellblasters, it gives you additional strength and additional damage. So again, against tougher enemies, it's worth doing it. But you've got to keep in mind that, you know, potentially you could lose some guys. Hellblasters are quite unique in the fact that they do get this thing where basically they can shoot back if they die at the thing that you were either shooting or that was shooting you. So, and luckily GW actually revised this rule and put it back in. So if this guy here died, he got the 1, he can shoot back before I remove him from the board. So it can be kind of a fun way to like double up your shots. Another thing with my Hellblasters is they have something called lethal hits. So lethal hits, very similar to devastating wounds, but the hit phase instead of the wound phase. So my lieutenant has an enhancement that gives everything lethal hits. I think it's part of him being a lieutenant, it gives out all the models lethal hits. So with lethal hits, similarly, if you roll your dice and you land on a 6, that goes, kind of skips over the wound roll and goes straight to the saving throw for ding. So again, if I did the 5 dice as an example, shooting 5 of them, then I would have got 1 lethal hit. Typically what we do is we just put them to one side and then I do my wound throw. Okay, so they've all gone through, bar 1, and then you bring that 1 back into the fray. So instead of having 3, you've got 4 attacks. It's quite good if you use it against tougher enemies because it means that you then, it's 1 less roll to actually get a hit off on them. Compared to devastating wounds that, apart from Feel No Pain, skips the saving throw entirely, this kind of just helps. So if I was shooting down into the Dreadnought and I got a couple of lethal hits, it means I'm not then going to have to roll against them too badly. I'm not going to have to roll, you know, 5s or 6s because of their toughness. I'm just going to skip straight through. Another thing that is on my heavy intercessors is called sustained hits. So sustained hits, lethal hits, they're all kind of in the same family in terms of doing it at the shooting, the initial shooting phase. So with sustained hits, my apothecary, I think again with an enhancement, I think he gives them all sustained hits. So that might be my lieutenant. Either way, if you had sustained hits on these guys and they were shooting down into the Thunderwolf cavalry that's there, similarly, if you land on a 6, you get an additional dice. So again, if I rolled 5 of them, say, I know this isn't how many attacks I have, but just as an example, and say I got 6, but 1 of them failed, I wouldn't remove that dice. But if all of them passed, I would add another dice. So again, if you get the luck of the RNG gods and you get quite a few 6s, it means that you could go from having 10 attacks to maybe 13 or 14 if you did really well. And that can just pile on the damage. If you can combine sustained hits with like a lethal hits as well, or with a devastating wounds, it can really start to rack up some points and some damage. You get it a lot, especially with the Space Wolves when it comes to their melee. A lot of their weapons have lethal hits, devastating wounds, and sustained hits, and pairing them all together can really create kind of a concoction of just wiping units out. So that's kind of it for mainly like the starting phase where you're kind of planning out who you're going to attack and your initial hit phase, and then there's a couple of others that go into, you know, your wound phase. So coming on to a couple of more niche ones, but also ones that are going to be stuff that you will see with specific units or when you get to the wound phase. Number 1 is Torrent. Dean mentioned it very briefly earlier. Torrent, primarily that I've seen it, is mainly on flame weapons. So if we took my little Inferno squad down here, yes, that is the first Inferno squad that you get in the initial box. That's why they all look like crap. They are my test unit for a lot of painting. But if you took them, what Torrent essentially means is you skip the hit phase. So you go straight to the wound. So you would just go straight to the wound roll with these guys. Very, very good if you're overwatching. Now, overwatching is if I'm coming to attack you, you can spend a CP to overwatch. Usually, you have to, I think it's only 6s, isn't it? Typically, you have to throw on a hit to overwatch something. Flamers are really good for that because it skips the hit throw. So imagine if this group was, you know, moving or charging towards my little Inferno squad and I overwatched, immediately I don't have to throw sixes to try and hit them, I can just blast them with flames. Friend Matt runs Sisters Battle. He's got Morgan Vol and her unit, and he's used that on me before, and it is devastating, especially when I ran a 10-man squad of Sanguinary Guard before they knocked him down to 6 at him, and he killed 8 of them. It is painful. Don't do it. It's horrible. But that is Torrents. You skip the hit throw entirely, move straight onto the wound throw. It can be really handy. Now, the Inferno squad is quite particular, but if you've got like flamers on tanks and things like that, it can be really, really effective against normal infantry units. You know, again, you're just skipping the hit throw, so you're just immediately blasting them. Torrent, a lot of times, kind of comes in with ignores cover as well. You do get that on quite a few units, which again, if you're attacking a building, can be devastating. You know, you're just missing the hit straight onto the wound. You've got no cover. If you've got a bit of AP on it as well, you're just burning everyone in there. Another one to look at, it will come up a little bit more, is Twin Linked. Now, like me and Dean were saying about GWEs and how they word things, Twin Linked is just a fancy way of saying that you re-roll the wound roll. That's all it is. So on my bikes, for example, their twin bolt guns do have twin linked on them. So again, if you compare twin linked with, you know, a devastating wound, it can really rack up, because immediately you're just re-rolling that wound roll and getting a hell of a lot of mileage out of your guns. These, with my chaplain, do have a doctrine that I can put on them that does give me, the chaplain, anyway, gives them devastating wounds from within 12 inches. So with devastating wounds and twin linked, they do a good amount of damage for quite weak weapons. So this is kind of the point with all of these. You know, these are the kind of minutiae that you really want to look at when you're getting into building an army, because if you've got a majority army that doesn't really have these, it can sting you in the long run. Dean's Wolf army is peppered and littered with lethal hits, devastating wounds, sustained hits, extra attacks, torrents, and it is just an onslaught when you're getting all this coming at you. So it is things to look at, but like I said, each unit has specific things that they can do.
So some of the units that you'll encounter on the tabletop have what's called an extra attack ability. For the Space Wolves, predominantly we have the Thunderwolf Cavalry, and we also have Logan Grimnar and his 2 wolves. So what we mean by extra attacks is when you're resolving your attacks, so you'll have Logan attacking first with his Axe of Morkai, you'll choose the attack profile, strike or sweep, and then Tyrak and Fenrir, which are his 2 wolves on his base, will also get an attack. So you follow their attack characteristics, which if I remember correctly is 4 attacks. You follow the same routine: attack, roll to wound, the damage and the AP. Similar process with Thunderwolf Cavalry, the rider attacks, then the cavalry does. Like I said, it's not something you'll encounter a lot, but it's something that throws a bit of confusion, mainly because you'll have some models that will have a melee weapon and they'll have a close combat weapon. If it doesn't have that extra attack keyword, you have to choose, am I going to attack with my main melee weapon, let's pretend in this instance it's a sword, or am I going to attack with my knife? You're obviously always going to attack with the sword, and arguably it's always going to be better. If it has that extra attack keyword, you could do both. If it doesn't, you have to pick and choose. So something to keep an eye out and bear in mind. So thank you yet again for joining us. We hope you find this video a bit of help across your battles on the tabletop. As always, if there's anything you'd like to see, anything you think we can focus on, please do let us know. As always, like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you as always to our sponsors, Market Timecast Miniatures and Shrewsbury Wargame Society, for letting us use our facilities, and thank you from us both for watching.
Thank you very much. See you later.